The morning star is bright upon the horizon. The iron gate of our prison stands half open. One gallant rush from the north will fling it wide open, while 4 millions of our brothers and sisters shall march out into liberty. Frederick Douglass, 1863.
Frederick Douglass was born in February of 1818 on the eastern shores of Talbot County, Maryland. The exact date of his birth is uncertain because the birth dates of newborn slaves were not recorded well or even recorded at all.
I have no accurate knowledge of my age, never having seen any authentic record containing it. By far the larger part of the slaves know as little of their ages as horses know of theirs, and it is the wish of most masters within my knowledge to keep their slaves thus ignorant. I do not remember to have ever met a slave who could tell of his birthday. Frederick Douglass, 1845.
Douglass was born a slave since he was born. He never knew his father, but he was led to believe his father was a white. He knew very little of his mother, for they lived on a different plantation when he was growing up as a boy. Edward Lloyd was the large plantation owner while he was a slave, but a man named Aaron Anthony was considered his master. With no parents to look after the young Frederick, his grandmother took care of him instead. At a young age of 6, Douglass was in charge of Anthony's daughter. He was watched carefully and soon realized his carefree childhood was now over. He witnessed Master Aaron brutally whip his Aunt Hester.
Her arms were stretched up at their full length so that she stood upon the ends of her toes. He then said to her,
"I'll learn you how to disobey my orders."
And soon the warm red blood came dripping to the floor.
He felt dehumanized and began working to read and write, and one day to be free. Anthony's wife, Sophie, taught him to read the Bible, and Douglass soon knew how to read and write like the other white children on the plantation. At the age of 15, he worked in a shipyard as part-time slave in Baltimore. Getting to keep half of his wages, he bought his first book, The Columbian Ordinator. He memorized it and practiced the speeches within it. Then, in 1830, Douglass married a supportive, shy young lady by the name of Anna Murray. Together, they made their own escape to the free land of New Bedford, Massachusetts. About 4 years after the escape, he became aware of the anti-slavery movement. He began liberating out against slavery. In 1841, Douglass went to a meeting held by William Lloyd Garrison, a strong speaker who stopped at nothing to see the diminish of slavery.
On the subject of slavery, I do not wish to think or speak or write with moderation. Tell a man whose house is on fire to give moderate alarm. Tell him to moderately rescue his wife from the hands of a ravisher. But urge me not to use moderation in a cause like the present. I will not retreat a single inch, and I will be heard. William Lloyd Garrison, 1831.
Garrison asked Douglass to speak to the crowd about his escape, and for 2 straight hours he tells stories and acts like a preacher to them.
I stand before you this night as a thief and a robber. I stole this head, these limbs, this body from my master and ran off with them. I have seen this pious man cross and tie the hands of a young female slave and lash her on the bare skin and justify the deed with a quotation from the Bible.
Garrison was very impressed, and he and Douglass soon were a team. They ventured out together on the 100 Conventions project in 1843 for anti-slavery. In 1845, Douglass publishes his first biography about his life, stories, and slave life. He leaves to England to protect himself and then returns to America in 1847 as a free man. Douglass and Garrison published a newspaper called the North Star. He wanted the paper to open up new opportunities for the blacks. In 1854, Frederick and Anna lived in Rochester, New York with their 5 children. With his family's help, he continued the newspaper. John Brown planned a revolution and asked Douglass to participate, but he refuses. After Brown is hung for treason, Frederick uses him as a symbol in his writing. When the Civil War begins, Douglass urged Abe Lincoln to have a Negro army. He soon becomes an advocate for the cause. In 1863, Douglass meets with Lincoln, and then he earns much respect from and for the president and his policies. Afterwards, he urges the young black men to get up and fight for what is right. By the end of the war, Douglass was made the Marshal of the District of Columbia. In the winter of 1882, Frederick published his last biography, and his wife passed away. He uses this tragedy to fight for women's rights, and he remarries a 20-year-old woman named Helen Pitts. At the age of 71, he became the ambassador for blacks in Haiti. But soon, 8 years later, he suffered a stroke and died on February 20th of 1895.
The Liberator became my meat and my drink. My soul was set all on fire. Its sympathy for my brethren in bonds, its faithful exposures of slavery, and its powerful attacks upon the institution sent a thrill of joy through my soul such as I had never felt before.